All right, how about LSU, Stephen? I mean, I think we're going to look back and say this is one of the best coaching jobs in modern SEC history. You lose the opener to Florida State, which turned out to be a not a bad loss, but they looked terrible for most of that game. They lost the bookend to Texas A&M. They everybody got their ass kicked by Georgia essentially, and then they did the ass kicking against Purdue in the bowl game. But some wild highs, some wild lows. But given what they had to work with, I'm going to give that offense a B plus because I don't think they had they had talent at running back, but when your starting quarterback is also your leading rusher, I mean that says something about the offensive line too, I guess. But I was just very very impressed with the strides made year one under Brian Kelly, particularly on the offensive side of the ball.
You and me both. I gave them a B plus. I will tell you that I almost gave them an A minus here because I think given the personnel challenges coming into the season with the offensive line, new quarterback, like you said, Jaden Daniels led the team in rushing. They had some nice running backs, but nobody really kind of took over as the number one guy and rushed for 1,000 yards. I think given the transition and kind of where this offense looked early at times during the year, you wondered, but they ended up averaging, over 34 points a game, fourth in the SEC. I think that's pretty remarkable considering the circumstances. So I gave them a B plus, but honestly, I could talk myself into an A minus here for LSU's offense.
Yeah, and that's kind of my thinking with the defense, Steven. I mean, had they showed up against Texas A&M, I mean that was another kind of a black eye, but they got Harold Perkins, one of the most dynamic players in the country. Would have loved to see Mason Smith be healthy. Maybe that would have really helped. They got the transfer Wingo in that turned in to be an all SEC selection. So certainly some highlights. The defense won them games like Auburn and Ole Miss. There was a big turnover there in the end zone. I thought a very, very good showing by Matt House's defense. So I gave the defense a B plus.
I gave him an A minus. Maybe I'm contradicting my offensive grade here, and maybe both need to be A minus. But I think the same challenges that applied to the offense apply to the defense here. I mean, there was some personnel turnover. They dipped into the transfer portal. They had to find transfers to start at corner and be second string. They were so thin there. They lost Mason Smith in the first game of the year. And they gave up 6.3 yards per play in the month of October, got it down to 5.1 for those games in the month of November. So I felt from watching LSU, there was a lot of uncertainty, new pieces coming into the season, had to navigate some rough waters. Then I think by the end of the year, they kind of started outside of that game against Texas A&M. They started to play a lot better. So the eye test told me that LSU's defense had improved. So I gave them an A minus for LSU's defense.
Right. And man, if they do two A's again, LSU is going to be trouble next year. You know what?
They really are. I have them in my top 10 for this season. I've seen them up in the top, 6 or so. We've talked about it, a few times now. That game against Florida State could be a playoff elimination game in the first game of the year. But I think if you're LSU, you have to be pretty confident going into 2023. I mean, Jaden Daniels actually has pieces around him and stability in his system for the first time, I think, in his college career. You got a defense that gets Mason Smith and Harold Perkins back. The game's in Tuscaloosa, but the SEC West might go through Baton Rouge next year. It's going to be a fun one.